CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Jamie O.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Donald Trump should face criminal charges, including insurrection, for his role in the Capitol Hill riots, a recommendation from a US committee.
Our other headlines: record demand for green energy in Germany. France's generator says nuclear and hydro has eased the power shortage. We look at Europe's struggle to keep the lights on.
Nurses stage a second day of strike action in the UK. Critical health incidents are declared as health bosses say patient safety cannot be guaranteed.
President Putin calls on Russia's security services to step up surveillance on what he's called traitors and spies at home and abroad.
And Argentinians line the streets to welcome Lionel Messi and his World Cup winning squad home to a hero's reception.
The US congressional panel investigating last year's riot on Capitol Hill says Donald Trump should face 4 criminal charges, including insurrection and obstruction.
The Democratic-led House Select Committee voted unanimously for the Justice Department to prosecute the former president. His supporters stormed Congress in January 2021 in a bid to overturn his election defeat. Trump denies any wrongdoing. One of the panel's 2 Republican members, Liz Cheney, says Trump is unfit for any office.
January 6, 2021 was the first time one American president refused his constitutional duty to transfer power peacefully to the next. For hours, he would not issue a public statement instructing his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol, despite urgent pleas from his White House staff and dozens of others to do so. In addition to being unlawful, as described in our report, this was an utter moral failure. No man who would behave that way at that moment in time can ever serve in any position of authority in our nation again.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent John Terrace in New York. John, for those of us who are not steeped in the intricacies of the US Constitution, what is the significance of all of this?
Well, I think it's very important that you said that, because this is a far more nuanced and subtle story than I think global newspaper headlines probably suggest. The first thing to say is that it is an unprecedented moment in all of US history. Now, I know the country's only just over 200 years old, but you understand what I mean. A congressional committee recommending criminal prosecution of a former United States president. Quite extraordinary. However, it is not clear whether charges will ever be brought against Donald Trump or members of his administration. There are serious doubts about that. Now, on Monday, the January 6th committee issued recommendations, and they are only recommendations, that the former president be charged on 4 counts. And these are the criminal indictments: that he invited or assisted or aided an insurrection, which I think is by far the most serious of the 4. That he obstructed an official proceeding. You remember January the 6th was a joint session of the House and the Senate, and they were there to ratify the election. Conspiracy to make false statements, and one that sounds worse than it really is, I think, conspiracy to defraud the American people. Now, do remember that Donald Trump is running again for the White House in 2024, and now this overhangs that bid. The committee cited Trump and others. We don't know who those others are, but we assume that it's members of the administration, some of whom may well have testified in the 17 months this committee has been operating. The committee itself suggests there could be as many as 2,000 people around the country who were involved in January the 6th. The committee says ours is not a system of justice where the foot soldiers go to jail and the masters and the ringleaders get a free pass. Now, there are plenty of people within the country who would argue against that, but let's put that to one side for now. They also recommended that 4 members of the Republican Party be passed on to the Ethics Committee, although time is running out for that to actually happen. And the January 6th committee will present its full report, its full findings on paper, tomorrow, Wednesday. Jamie and Robin?
OK, so given all of that, what then happens? Talk us through the process of what happens next.
I think it's very important for our viewers around the world to understand that these are just recommendations. Those 4 criminal charges are recommendations only from the January 6th committee. They have no sway over the Justice Department. Now, the Justice Department will now get to see the evidence that they've accrued, and it amounts to 1,000 witness statements and 1 million documents and notations. And the committee is hoping that the sheer heft of that, the sheer amount of information that they have collected over the 17 months that they've been operating will be enough to sway the Justice Department to bring criminal charges against former President Trump and members of his administration. But I have to point out that the Justice Department is made up of career lawyers who will look at the evidence, yes, but they will also have to weigh up whether or not they think charges are appropriate and whether or not they think they can win. And if they don't, then it's unlikely that they'll bring charges. Now, Mike Pence, the Vice President under Donald Trump, has said that he hopes the Justice Department does not bring charges against his old boss. Yes, his actions and his words were reckless, says Mike Pence, but it's not a criminal offence to take bad advice from lawyers. And do remember that President Trump has not been charged with organising January the 6th, more like that he's been charged with not doing enough on the day. I think his 2024 White House bid has probably been damaged, but do remember how partisan this country is. Republicans, MAGA members and Republican-supporting TV channels have simply not covered these hearings. They've blocked them out completely. Now, the committee itself is now disbanding, and it's doing that mainly. I think it would have carried on into 2023 had the Democrats won the House, but they didn't. The Republicans take over on January the 2nd, and they've said they're having no truck with this committee. Guys?
Well, there's more difficult hours ahead, aren't there? Because his tax returns could be made public.
Yes, certainly for President Trump, it doesn't end there, because the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee that looks really at the flow of funds, you know, things like revenue and related issues, tariffs, trade, debt, that sort of thing. We are told that they're going to vote today, Tuesday, on whether or not to release the tax returns of Donald Trump going back many years, his tax secrets, if you will. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States cleared the way for these documents to go to the House Ways and Means Committee. The Democrats have fought so long and so hard to have them released, as you have seen with the work of the January 6th committee. I think it's likely we will see something possibly before Christmas, or certainly in between Christmas and the New Year. Remember, President Trump is the only candidate and then president who hasn't willingly released his tax returns around the point of him running for office, citing that he was being audited by the authorities. Jamie and Robin?
John, thank you for that. Our correspondent, John Terrace, in New York.
The global energy squeeze has seen consumers' bills soar and corporate earnings too. The battle to keep the lights on in Europe has given the grid operators sleepless nights.
In Germany, demand for green energy rose to record highs this year and is set to grow further, while France's main power grid operator says increased use of nuclear and hydropower has lowered the risk of energy shortages.
Major players in both countries' energy sectors have been giving their assessments of a challenging 2022. Well, our correspondent Peter Oliver is in Berlin. So, Peter, Germany is saying that green energy is on the rise. What's the picture of the country's energy usage?
Yes, we've been hearing from the Federal Association for Energy and Water Management on Tuesday. They're a group that helps the government make their energy policy, but they also have the numbers as to where Germany's energy's come from over the last year and before that as well. They say that green energy actually rose, or the amount of energy generated using things like solar and wind, over 2022 rose up to 47% of the energy consumed in Germany in 2022. That's up from 42% in 2021. It's not all good news, though, because while that is up, so is the use of coal to generate electricity as well. Both lignite and hard coal, both of them rising, seeing from 28.3% in 2021 to 31.9% this year. What that means is that after years and years of steady decline in energy and CO2 emissions from energy generation, Germany's CO2 emissions for that particular sector actually rose in 2022 while they used more and more green energy. A lot of that, though, is down to the fact that Germany's been trying to move away from reliance on gas, and particularly gas coming from Russia, since the conflict in Ukraine started. Now, the aim from the government was to get gas usage down by 20% in 2022. Germans haven't managed that. It's set at around 14.8%. However, when it comes to the amount of gas that Germany has been taking from Russia, that has declined dramatically. It stands at 20% of the gas consumed in Germany having come from Russia this year. That is down from 55% in 2021. There's also been some figures out about just how much money the German government is spending to try and keep the lights on and make sure that there is a constant supply of sources that it can take energy from. The Reuters news agency's calculations puts that figure close to $500 billion. Now, if you break that down to person by person, that's around $5,730 per German across the whole country.
Let's talk about France then, Peter, and the risk of power outages there has reduced. That does sound like good news.
Yes, RTE, that's the group that are in charge of looking after the power network in France. They say that they've reduced the risk of a blackout in the country to medium. It had previously been high. They say the reason for this is because there's been an increase in the availability of power coming from nuclear energy, also from hydro energy, and there's been a take-up in a government policy to try and, well, get people to stop using as much power. The government in Paris wanted to see French citizens reduce their power usage by 10%. They're hitting 9% at the moment, so they're doing pretty well. But this is good not just for France, it's also good here in Germany as well, because Berlin and Paris have an energy sharing agreement that sees electricity from Germany go to France, and gas from France come here to Germany. As I mentioned, Germany very, very keen to get as much gas as it can that doesn't come from Russia. So the fact that France has more and more electricity and less risk to its own power grid, that means they're going to be able to send more electricity over the border here to Germany to their neighbours.
Peter Oliver in Berlin, thank you very much.
Hospitals in the UK are facing unprecedented pressure amid a wave of industrial action. Health bosses are warning that they're unable to guarantee patient safety, with some areas declaring critical incidents.
Nurses are staging a second day of strike action, calling for an above-inflation pay rise. Ambulance workers are also set to strike on Wednesday, and the military has been put on standby to help out.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent Andrew Wilson outside a hospital in London. Andrew, another day on the picket line for nurses. How much more of this can we expect?
Well, I think the signs are that the nurse strike particularly is going quite well as far as they're concerned. They are deeply committed to changing their working conditions. They are very committed to getting their salaries changed and reviewed favourably by the National Health Service, in other words, by the government. This is their second day of striking. We're in central London today. Now, the last time I spoke to you, I was in a provincial city. This time I'm in the capital, and you'll hear from time to time the horns of the cars. It's a busy road in southwest London, and you'll hear them beeping their support for the few number of nurses who are making an awful lot of noise outside the hospital. What they've done this time round is they've hit 76 different NHS regions around England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but not the same ones necessarily as they hit last week. In other words, preserving some of the hospitals for not being hit twice. And again, there are nurses on standby for crucial care and accident and emergency and end-of-life care, palliative care, cancer care. They're still working, so it's only some of the nurses that have gone out on strike. But thus far, the level of support they're receiving would suggest that the government waiting game so far is not having much success.
Andrew, OK, that's the nurses. So what about ambulance staff? Because they're also set to go on strike. How's the UK government responding?
Well, so far, Rishi Sunak is currently in a meeting with the House of Commons Select Committee, an all-party committee that is quizzing him about all his plans for his premiership, including what he's going to do about the economy, what he's going to do about interest rates, what he wants to do about the strikes, and what he wants to do about the NHS. I dipped into that meeting a little earlier, and it all seems very sombre, and he's facing some quite tough questions. Union leaders met with Steve Barclay, the NHS, the health minister, today as well, because concerns are growing. Now, beyond the nurses' strike, you mentioned the ambulance drivers. That is something that the authorities, the hospitals, the health trusts and the government are particularly worried about, because although the ambulance drivers have said that their main Category 1 ambulances will still be on call for very severe illnesses and emergencies, Category 2 can't guarantee they'll be called out. That's anything from chest pains to perhaps having a stroke to simply a patient being transferred from one hospital to another. That service will disappear. Now, the Army, the Navy and the airports have all in various numbers been recruited in to try and help back up that loss of staffing and personnel. But even the head of the Army has said that he doesn't think his soldiers should be doing this kind of work. They're not qualified to do it. They're not qualified to run an ambulance with a blue light through traffic. They're not qualified to do some of the stuff that the paramedics do. So there's an element of chaos building here. And health leaders and health executives and members of the NHS trusts have now written to the Prime Minister saying they cannot guarantee patient safety if this continues. And by if this continues, they're meaning that if the nurses continue into the new year going on strike and the ambulance crews continue into the new year going on strike because there is no negotiation with the government and it continues to sit on its hands and not meet with them, then they're saying in the health service that is a recipe for real problems down the road.
Andrew, thank you for that. Our correspondent, Andrew Wilson in London.
You're watching CGTN. Still to come. Will China roar ahead? The World Bank isn't so sure. We'll hear what the analysts make of it next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe, and a quick reminder, CGTN is available to watch for free on all of the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online at Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK on Freeview.
The World Bank has cut its economic growth projections for China, revising 2022 growth to 2.7%. with a rebound of 4.3% expected in 2023. Both figures fall below Beijing's targets. Well, let's talk to Rajiv Biswas, Executive Director and Asia-Pacific Chief Economist at S&P Global Market Intelligence. Welcome back to the programme. So China had set a GDP growth target for this year of around 5.5%. Is that still possible?
Well, that target was set back in March, and since the target was set, there have been quite a few COVID-19 outbreaks in various cities across China, and that has resulted in more restrictive measures to try to control the spread of COVID-19. As a result of that, consumer spending has been impacted, and therefore that will have quite a big impact on the overall growth estimate for China for 2022, because consumer spending is a very important part of total GDP growth, and what we've seen is that consumer spending in any country that's been heavily impacted by COVID-19 outbreaks does get heavily cut. because obviously they're spending on shopping malls, on buying new cars, and many other kinds of retail spending are affected. So consequently, the outlook for growth is impacted for 2022, and the growth outlook for this year has been, I think, very much revised down by many analysts, probably to around about half the pace of what was originally expected at the beginning of the year, because of these sort of uncertain conditions relating to the COVID outbreaks.
So COVID obviously one of the key ones, but what other factors are weighing on growth?
Well, I think when we consider the overall contributors to growth, actually consumer spending is very, very important. It's about half of total GDP. So we've seen that retail sales have been quite weak this year in China. In the first 11 months of the year, according to the official estimates, retail sales were pretty much flat. They haven't grown. So that's probably the most important factor. But there's also been weakness in housing construction. Again, that's somewhat affected by COVID-19 as well. And what we've also seen is that industrial production has been growing at a more moderate pace than normal. It has grown at about 4%, so that's, quite reasonable growth, but lower than what normally would be expected in China. And I think a key driver for growth in manufacturing has been exports. In the first half of the year, Chinese manufacturing exports were quite strong. But what we're now seeing is that the US and the European Union economies are weakening going into 2023. We expect pretty weak growth in both the US and the EU in 2023. So that will affect Chinese manufacturing exports. However, on the positive side, I would say that the outlook for domestic demand is for some improvement in 2023. And so that's going to be a favorable factor when we look at the year ahead.
And when do you think the economy will fully emerge from the damage caused by the pandemic?
Well, we do expect that next year will be much better in China, because what we've seen all around Asia in 2022 is that in many countries, as COVID restrictive measures have been gradually eased back, there's been quite a rebound in domestic demand, particularly consumer spending, because consumers are facing restrictions, but when the restrictions are eased, they come back to the shopping malls, they start buying cars again, they start traveling again. All of these things we expect will happen in 2023 as restrictive measures are gradually eased. So we expect quite a rebound, particularly in consumer spending in 2023 in China, which will help domestic demand. And there's actually upside risk that growth could rebound quite strongly, stronger than perhaps expected. So I think the outlook at the moment is for quite an improvement in household spending in 23 in China due to pent-up demand coming back as consumers again start spending gradually through the course of 2023.
Rajiv Biswas from S&P Global Market Intelligence, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Health authorities in China are battling a wave of coronavirus infections, which has put a strain on the hospitals. Beijing authorities are increasing the number of facilities to screen and treat infection, with many sports halls converted to treatment centres.
The most ill patients and children are being prioritised for treatment as all major cities try and expand intensive care. A leading virologist has told CGTN that many COVID patients have underlying health conditions.
With the weakening pathogenicity of Omicron and wide vaccination, we are seeing major changes in COVID-19 fatality. The main cause of Omicron-led death is still underlying diseases. The National Health Commission has clarified that death caused by COVID-19 and respiratory failures are characterized as COVID-19 related death.
China's foreign ministry says it disagrees with any form of official interaction between the European Union and Taiwan. Beijing has called on the EU to approach its relationship with Taiwan with caution and respect the one-China policy. A delegation from the European Parliament's International Trade Committee arrived in Taiwan on Monday on a 4-day visit to discuss trade and investments.
Australia's foreign minister says she will push China to lift trade sanctions during her visit to Beijing. Penny Wong is in China this week to mark 50 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Bilateral ties collapsed after Canberra banned Huawei from its 5G network in 2018. Wong is also expected to seek consular access to 2 detained Australians.
The British bank TSB has been fined almost $60 million for what the regulators have called widespread and serious failings related to an IT meltdown in 2018. Millions of customers were locked out of their online bank accounts for weeks following an attempt to move data records to a new online system. The inquiry found that TSB failed to properly organise and control the migration programme.
British Airways has apologised to customers after its flights from the United States were grounded overnight on Monday. The airline blamed what it called a technical issue on long-haul services. Delays affected routes to and from Mexico, Canada and the Caribbean, as well as those bound for the UK.
China's relaxation of coronavirus lockdown policies is sparking something of a recovery in the world's largest aviation market. China's Southern Airlines has resumed 21 international destinations this month, with more flights to follow in the new year. Our correspondent Huang Fei reports.
These passengers are boarding a 15-hour direct flight from Guangzhou to New York. They're asked to present vaccination records and fill out a customs declaration form. PCR testing is no longer required, but some passengers told us they still took one out of habit.
My daughter and husband are in the U.S. I haven't seen them in 8 months. I miss them a lot. Traveling is a lot easier now. I didn't need to show my health data coming in, but I still took a PCR test yesterday to be safe.
I work in research and development for autonomous driving. Meeting with international partners is important for our field. We used to have to quarantine for a month on the way back. I'm glad things are returning to normal now.
China Southern plans to resume 56 more international routes next month. While China's borders remain closed to tourists, the airline says there is strong demand from students, business travelers, and others with long-term visas.
We're seeing a steady increase of passengers in international departure. Most of our flights are 80% full. We're also training ground staff ahead of the peak travel season and working with our colleagues overseas to update COVID protocols.
China ended restrictions on those moving between provinces and cities in early December, dropping quarantines and health status app check-ins. Lunar New Year bookings are expected to reach the highest level in 3 years. However, excitement about traveling is mixed with worries about rising infections.
I'm finally going on a trip I planned 3 years ago. But of course, I'm a little worried of getting infected. That's why I'll try to visit less crowded places and go off the beaten tracks.
The swift rebound in domestic travels offers a long-awaited respite for Chinese carriers after suffering billions in losses since the pandemic. Industry watchers say international routes are a major revenue stream, and gradual recovery will offer further confidence to the market.
Here at the Guangzhou Baiyun International Airport, the number of overseas destinations with flights from Guangzhou has increased to 50% of pre-pandemic levels. And as calls for border reopening intensify, the airport expects a sharp increase of international flights from this winter and next spring. Huang Fei, CGTN, Guangzhou.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, we're talking TikTok next, and why it's the only major social media platform to significantly increase advertising revenue.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore, We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference? The difference is in the detail, in the background,
defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story. Wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Donald Trump should face criminal charges, including insurrection, for his role in the Capitol Hill riots. The recommendation from a US committee.
Keeping the lights on in Europe, France and Germany take stock of their energy networks.
Nurses stage a second day of strike action in the UK. Critical health incidents are declared as health bosses say patient safety cannot be guaranteed.
Russia's president has called on his security services to step up surveillance on what he's called traitors, spies and saboteurs, both at home and abroad.
His comments come as Moldova warns that Russia could launch an offensive on its borders in the new year. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports.
Vladimir Putin marked the annual National Security Services Day by giving a personal appeal to some of Russia's top intelligence figures, urging tougher surveillance on infrastructure and individuals as the conflict in Ukraine continues. He also gave a downbeat assessment of the situation in the eastern Donbass region.
The situation in Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics and the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions is extremely difficult. People living there, Russian citizens, hold out hope for you, for your protection.
On Monday, Putin visited Belarus for the first time in 3 years, fueling fears of a new phase opening in the conflict. However, both Moscow and Minsk continue to deny that Belarus is poised to play an active role in the military effort. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president claims more than 30 Russian-backed drones were shot down over his country on Monday, many in and around the capital Kyiv before they could hit their targets. Volodymyr Zelensky appealed to Western leaders meeting in Latvia for more military support. On Tuesday, Zelensky also made an unannounced visit to his troops in the contested city of Bakhmut, which has been pummeled by Russian shelling in recent days.
Bakhmut remains the hottest spot on the entire front line. More than 1,300 kilometres of active hostilities. Since May, they've been trying to break our Bakhmut. As time passes, Bakhmut breaks not only the Russian army, but also its mercenaries.
In neighbouring Moldova, fears are growing that Russia may attempt to create a land corridor linking the disputed region of Transnistria with southern Ukraine and Russian-controlled Crimea. Intelligence chiefs say a ground offensive could begin as early as January. Ken Brown, CGTN.
A 97-year-old German woman has been given a 2-year suspended sentence after being convicted of Nazi-era crimes. Irmgard Fürchner was found to have been complicit in the murders of more than 11,000 people while working as a typist at a concentration camp during the Second World War. The judge said the fact that she was a civilian worker did not prevent her from being aware of what was happening at the camp.
Opposition parties in Fiji have agreed to form a new coalition government ending 16 years of rule by the Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama. It comes after no single party won an outright majority in last week's election. The new three-party administration will consist of Social Democrats, the People's Alliance and the National Federation Party.
A jury in Los Angeles has found former Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein guilty of rape and 2 other counts of sexual assault. The 70-year-old Oscar winner faces a 24-year prison sentence. He's already serving 23 years after being convicted of rape and sexual assault at his first trial in New York 2 years ago.
The United States Supreme Court has ruled that travel restrictions on migrants at the US-Mexico border must stay in place. The so-called Title 42 law was brought in by Donald Trump in 2020. The Biden administration wants to lift that law, which has seen the expulsion of around 2 million people. But the court agreed with 19 Republican states who had called for it to remain.
Now, if you're off skiing to Austria, it's going to cost you. It's now more expensive than ever to get to the top of the country's ski slopes as lift operators raise their prices because of soaring energy costs.
Ski resorts say they've been forced to make changes to cope with those rising energy prices. Our correspondent Johannes Pleschberger reports.
Long faces at the ticket counters of the Zauchensee resort. Here, ski passes are the most expensive in all of Austria.
68 euros for one day is a little bit too much, honestly.
On average, lift tickets in the Alpine Republic have risen 10% this year. Skiing or snowboarding is Austria's national sport. Back when I was a kid, almost every classmate took part in skiing lessons. But now most Austrians think twice about whether they or their children can afford to go skiing. Austria's lift operators have also been struggling, given the country's record 11% inflation.
We had to increase ticket prices because the costs for ski resorts have also increased drastically. The energy prices are 5 times higher, the diesel prices doubled.
In the past few years, this resort invested in new snow cannons that require only half the electricity of previous models. But further cost-cutting is required. There will be no heating of chairlifts or terraced areas, and the lifts are running 2 meters per second slower, depending on the occupancy rate.
As you can see, fewer people are sitting on the lift. We use this switch to turn down the speed. In that way, we save energy.
Austria's ski resorts are eligible for state subsidies if they can meet government goals on saving energy. What's unclear is whether enough skiers will come out to enjoy the slopes, given the high prices, not only of the lifts, but their own basic food and energy costs. Johannes Pleschberger, CGTN, Zauchensee, Austria.
TikTok is the only major social media platform to significantly increase advertising revenue this year. A global ad slowdown has ravaged sales across Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat and YouTube, as the usually recession-proof online platforms feel the crunch. Advertising spend on social media grew just 4% this year, down from 36% the year before.
And that spending is only expected to climb 7% next year. But in 2022, TikTok doubled its advertising revenue, surpassing rivals Meta and Snap, as the Chinese social media giant took a larger share of the market. Well, let's talk to CGTN's Duncan Hooper, who's been watching the story for us. Why is TikTok so popular with users?
Well, Jeremy, I think you have to look and get a bit of context. So social media is now almost 20 years old, amazingly. And for almost all of that time, Facebook has been by far the dominant platform. It has around 2.6 or 2.9, I think now, billion users around the world. So it's the biggest. But in this industry, what's important is not necessarily the absolute size, but the trends. And there was a big change that happened during lockdown. And that, as you mentioned, was the rise of TikTok. just going to give you one number which can help quantify this for you. 22 trillion minutes. That's how much time TikTok users spent watching videos in 2021. To give you a bit of understanding of what that means, there are 500,000, 500,000 minutes in a year. So that's the equivalent of about 45 million people spending every minute of the year watching TikTok. It's huge. Why is it so big? Well, it's got three big advantages. One, it favors short vertical video. This is what young people want. They want the whole real estate of their phone to be taken up by the screen. They want something short because they like to switch their attention from one thing to another. It's got an algorithm which is very powerful. It surfaces surprising things, but things that really are addictive for its users. And the third thing that it gets right is it's brought a lot of creators onto the platform. Because it can make these videos go hugely viral, lots of people want to play. And of course, lots of content means lots of people that wanted to watch it.
So that's why users like it. But what about advertisers? What's in it for them?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, those numbers are really quite stark. TikTok doubling its advertising in a time where economically it's very difficult. Okay, the first thing that gets cut in a cost of living crisis like this is the marketing budgets. So a lot of advertisers have said, look, maybe previously we'd have put a bit of money on Facebook, a bit of money on YouTube, maybe a bit on Snap, maybe a bit of Twitter. But now we're going to have to consolidate and we're going to have to pick a winner. And a lot of them are saying the must-have platform is TikTok. Why? Well, firstly, because it's the one that's growing. It's cool. It's getting bigger. Advertisers love that. They love to be on the trend. Secondly, it's seen as authentic. Okay? Facebook has a reputation for maybe forcing ads a little bit onto people. Whereas in TikTok, one thing that we found actually creating video, the highly produced stuff doesn't do very well. People like to see things that feel like it's real, and advertisers, of course, want to be seen as being real and close to people's lives rather than distant and produced in the studio. And lastly, there's quite a big trend that's affected Facebook, which has become the master of data. Okay? Over its time, it's accumulated all this data, really good at allowing people to target ads. But Apple in particular and other platforms have said, look, under our privacy rules, we don't want Facebook to be able to use this data as it has. We're going to block them from tracking these users, targeting the ads so effectively, and that's taken away this advantage from Facebook, and that's made TikTok relatively more interesting.
Okay, so TikTok is cool, it's getting bigger, it's fashionable, the only way is down. What are the threats on the horizon?
Yeah, so I think the threats are coming from two areas. Obviously, there are new competitors that come into the market. One of those, perhaps the best known, is Be Real, which has attracted a lot of younger users. And again, it's through this authenticity. What it does is it says you can only create content at certain points in the day. So you can't fake it. You can't make yourself look better. You have to take it at this moment. I don't think that's too much of a threat for TikTok because it's quite a different proposition. It's not as rich. The other thing, of course, that could come in is artificial intelligence. If you saw Elon Musk's company OpenAI launch their ChatGPT AI tool, that has the potential actually to create content by itself without human beings. And that could really revolutionize how things work. But probably the bigger threat in the short term is regulation. TikTok, because it is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, has got tangled up in the geopolitics. American politicians, we saw Donald Trump try and ban the platform. He didn't succeed, but there's measures in place now to stop it being installed on government devices in the US. And there are also lots and lots of threats for people saying, look, TikTok could give your data to China. TikTok, of course, says, no, we've never been asked to do this. We don't process data in China. It's quite safe. But I think that's the big vulnerability for TikTok, is if the regulators go after it, either on that privacy grounds or on the security of data grounds because of the links to China, that could be a big impact. It's already banned in India, for instance.
Interesting stuff. Duncan, thank you for that. CGTN's Duncan Hooper. Now, the cost of living crisis is affecting many charities. Donations have been falling as demand rises. In Hungary, high inflation is forcing more people to ask for help from charitable organisations. Our correspondent Pablo Guterres reports.
It's the season of giving, but in Hungary there is less to give this holiday time. Rising food and energy prices this year have squeezed household budgets, and those who used to donate to charitable causes during the holidays are giving less or none at all. Inflation is the Grinch that stole Christmas, giving charities little to be cheerful about.
We are going through a difficult time in Europe, but here in Hungary, it all just seems much harder. High inflation, fuel prices, and the Ukraine conflict have affected how much people can give. This situation makes it hard to convince people about the importance of donating during this season.
Every year at the start of December, Santa's Factory, Hungary's oldest Christmas charity, sets up shop in the heart of Budapest. Inside this giant inflatable dome, a team of volunteers that come from all over the world collect donations. Barry is one of them.
Like every time someone gives us toys and everything, even the little things make me happy because it shows how much kindness there are in the citizens.
Toys, non-perishable food, and toiletries are sorted out, boxed, and shipped across Hungary by Santa Factory volunteers. Each year, they help between 5,000 to 7,000 families, but this year, they may fall short on their goals. Santa's Factory has been running for 18 years, and they say this is one of the most challenging. Donations are significantly down, and they need more help to spread some cheer this Christmas. Merry Christmas, Santa. Despite the economic challenges, some people are still giving what little they can for those that have much less than them.
We just brought some toys like teddies and small big animals, and I just also had a skate roller, that's all.
And while donations might be low this year, organizers at Santa's Factory are doing all they can to help lift the spirits of those in need.
Most éppen a mai napon egy Mikulás.
Christmas is coming. We have Santa here with us. We want to brighten their day, but we are well aware that for many families in need, this season could be mentally hard. So we try to give them hope, to show them we care.
People are giving, spreading what holiday cheer they can. But as Christmas nears and the need grows, charities are hoping for a miracle to meet their donation goals. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, Budapest.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. We're live in Buenos Aires. Tens of thousands of football fans turn out to welcome the world champions back home to Argentina.
I fell in love with Chinese culture the second I started to experience it.
70 years ago, a small group of British businessmen travelled to China to unlock opportunities between the two countries. They became known as the icebreakers.
Building bridges is a natural thing. There is no age and gender difference in our spirit, no race difference in our soul.
I think food is an incredible way of bringing different cultures together. I am enjoying learning every aspect about it.
Chinese literature stretches back for millennia, but it's still really relevant for today.
I hope that Chinese and British fashion community could be more frequently communicating with each other.
An incredible mix of people, cultures, food, and there is so much to see and so much to do.
I have a great desire to make the Chinese civilization more accessible.
It's about our future generation's future.
The craftsmanship, the technique, the material uses, the color uses.
You can kind of take things on board and continue to develop and grow.
Meet the bridge builders, the individuals who dare to think beyond the horizon and open up our world.
Everything seems to have a story. I just think that's absolutely beautiful. A huge tick.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. World Cup champions Argentina have returned home. Captain Lionel Messi and manager Lionel Scaloni were the first to disembark, with Messi proudly holding the trophy they won by beating France.
Thousands of fans lined the streets of Buenos Aires as the players paraded on an open-top bus. The celebrations are set to continue all day and no doubt much of the night, as the Argentinian government declared Tuesday a national holiday. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Joel Richards, who's watching it all. Joel, well, an extraordinary welcome home for this victorious team.
Extraordinary really is the word, because the scenes that we have seen
certainly in Buenos Aires, but across Argentina, as this nation celebrates the third World Cup title, have been nothing short of extraordinary. The estimates place around 1 million people on Sunday, immediately after that win in the World Cup final, but estimates are now going up beyond that for today, after Lionel Messi and the squad and the coach Lionel Scaloni touched down in Buenos Aires in the small hours of Tuesday morning. And now today there's just, on the streets of Buenos Aires, it's impossible to estimate how many, but we said hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people here, trying to catch a glimpse of the trophy, Messi and the other players, and really celebrate this third World Cup title win.
A national holiday, an open-top bus tour. How else will they be celebrating today?
Well, frankly, that's not something I can answer with total security, because in the morning we had one plan, which was that the open-top bus would come along this avenue, which is the 9 de Julio. It runs all the way through Buenos Aires up to the obelisk and then beyond. That was the initial plan, but then that changed. It was a possibility that the players would go to the Casa Rosada, which is the government house. That too then fell through. There was talk of them just coming along the motorway, the 25 de Mayo, the 25th of May motorway, which is a good couple of miles along there. But now we're seeing pictures that the supporters have filled that motorway. So really the plans are changing by the minute, simply because of the sheer number of people who have come out to celebrate.
What next for Lionel Messi, both for club and country?
Well, for Lionel Messi, there's more international football. This probably is his last World Cup, although even that's up for debate, because many people are already saying that he should have a place in the squad for the next World Cup in 4 years' time, when he'll be 39 years old. But nonetheless, obviously, first of all, celebrating, the players get a break. But for Messi, he has confirmed that he loves playing football, so he wants to continue. And Argentina have the Copa America next year, and why not continue on, try and get the momentum going and lift off from this World Cup win, last year's Copa America win as well, and just really crown a fabulous few years for the Argentine national side. So for Messi, in the sporting side of things, certainly he'll continue to play for Argentina. It remains to be seen what's going to happen in 4 years' time. I think everyone here hopes that he would be part of the squad, if not necessarily such a big part on the pitch at 39 years of age. But as for the country, what's ahead is just a lot of celebrating, because for people here, this World Cup means so much for them. For a younger generation, people under the age of 35 or so, they've never seen Argentina win the World Cup, and so that really has part of what is making the scenes that we're seeing here in Buenos Aires a historic day.
Joel, thank you for that. Our correspondent Joel Richards in Argentina.
Well, across Europe, Christmas markets are in full swing, but one Greek town is breaking with tradition and giving its market a high-tech makeover. Our correspondent Evangelos Sipsas reports.
From above, it looks like any other Christmas market. Lights, decorations, and elves. But on the ground, things are a bit smarter.
Here, in the city of Trikala, for the second time during the last 7 years, fully autonomous vehicles are going to circulate inside the city center. Back in 2015, it was the City Mobile 2 project, where fully autonomous minibuses were running using a dedicated bus lane. Nowadays, the fully autonomous vehicles will be part of the normal traffic.
And they're all controlled from inside the market. But it's not only the driverless minibuses that make this Christmas market in northern western Greece special. While many still write letters to Santa, here they're being delivered by robots, Santa's new little helpers.
Visitors are always excited and never fully understand what these small robots are. They see them and they go, wow, what are these small robots? And we explain to them, of course, what they are, that they can perform all these duties. They are always amazed and happy that these new technologies apply here in our city. These small robots are also very popular because of how cute they look, especially with small children. They love them.
Despite the innovation, things have been affected by the energy crisis, with organizers forced to make savings. But that's led to more innovation, with coffee grounds being used to heat up the booths.
Here in the city of Trikala, we have fully autonomous vehicles travelling around the city centre. We did this before, in 2015, but back then the vehicles used dedicated bus lanes. Now they're part of the normal traffic.
It's Greece's biggest and smartest Christmas theme park, attracting around 40,000 visitors every weekend. And the innovative technology and initiatives all add to the festive feeling. Evangelos Ipsas for CGTN in the city of Trikala.
Toy sales continue to rise globally, adding to concerns over our ever-increasing appetite for plastic.
But among the figures, sales of more environmentally friendly toys are also surging in the run-up to Christmas. Our correspondent Karina Mitchell reports.
It's crunch time when it comes to holiday shopping, and making sure the little ones are taken care of is top of mind for one grandparent at this busy Manhattan toy store.
I just walked 20 blocks for a magic wand.
Global toy purchases have been on the rise. From the start of the year through September, the industry has seen overall sales grow by 2% to almost $37 billion, per retail tracking site NPD Group.
Plush toys have seen the biggest rise, jumping 32% year over year, according to one report, followed by a 12% increase in action figures like this.
And the best-selling toy property of 2022?
Pokemon continues to just be a gigantic brand. In fact, it is the most popular pop culture brand on the planet.
Zahn says other items making Toy Insider's 2022 Hot Toys list include this Vital Hero interactive wearable device, as well as some good old basic fun with this Tonka Mighty Monster dump truck. But also playing an increasingly active part of the landscape are sustainable toys. Their global market size was valued at nearly $19 million in 2020 and is estimated to hit nearly $60 million by 2030.
These were not even conversations when we were doing product reviews a few years ago. And so this year, we introduced 2 new lines that are sustainable at Spin Master. And then next year, we're doubling that.
The manager at family-owned Mary Arnold Toys, a staple on the Upper East Side since 1931, says she's noticed a shift in consumer habits.
The more sustainable toys we carry, the more they are flying off the shelves. We have customers, I don't get too many people asking for it, but I find if I present it here in the store, people are buying it.
It's a consideration, but I have to say there just aren't enough of them, so I often cave. But I'd pay extra for them.
The elevated interest in sustainability even warranted a mention on Toy Insider's 2022 list of the perfect eco-friendly toys. It includes an animal PlayStation, even something to stir the imagination.
Well, they've got the Cafe Barista coffee shop set here. Guess what? All of that wood in here, FSC certified. That means that it is grown sustainably and it is replenished when they are done. Sustainability is no longer a trend. It's the way the toy industry is moving.
Smitham agrees, but says for her company's toy portfolio, it's not just about sales. There is an altruistic end goal.
At the end of the day, we're all about creating magical experiences for children, but we also want to make sure that we're protecting the planet that these children are one day going to inherit.
Karina Mitchell, CGTN, New York.
The headlines again. Donald Trump should face criminal charges, including insurrection, for his role in the Capitol Hill riots. That's the recommendation from the U.S. committee.
Our other headlines: record demand for green energy in Germany. France's generator says nuclear and hydro has eased the power squeeze as Europe reviews how to keep the lights on.
And nurses stage a second day of strike action in the UK. Critical health incidents are declared as health bosses say patient safety cannot be guaranteed.
And that's it for Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching.
More on all our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
We're on smart TV apps: Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app, and in the UK on Freeview.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of the team here in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.